Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're getting up close and personal
Oh,
with ourselves. Yeah, we're talking human anatomy. And I know what you're thinking. Anatomy. Again.
well, we've all taken a class or two.
Exactly. But
You're-
trust me, this is different. We're diving into some seriously cool stuff this time around. I've got a stack of lecture notes here.
Oh, and I brought a journal article I think you'll find interesting.
See? I told you. We're going way beyond the basics here. In fact, just glancing at my notes. Did you know there are about 200 different types of cells in the human body?
Really? Wow.
Yeah, 200, each with its own.
Like a specialized job to do.
Exactly. It's mind-blowing. But before we get lost in a sea of cells,
Right.
let's start with the bigger picture.
This is basic.
Yeah, like what even is anatomy? Luckily, our Intro to Anatomy lecture notes here have got us covered. And get this, the very first line. The definition of anatomy.
Let me guess. Something about the body.
It says cutting up or apart.
Cutting up or apart.
Yep. Apparently it comes from the Greek word anatom, which literally means dissection,
So it's all about understanding how things are put together.
by taking them apart.
Makes sense.
It's like building a house.
Or maybe taking one apart.
Right. Except way more complex.
Oh.
Speaking of words and their meanings, I was reading something about anatomical etymology the other day. That's just a fancy way of saying the origin of anatomical terms. And it's amazing how much the words themselves can tell us.
Oh, absolutely. Take the word hypochondriac, for example. It comes from the Greek words for under and cartilage, referring to the area in the body under the ribs. And it's fascinating how that anatomical location evolved into the more colloquial meaning we often associate with the word today.
Right. It's like, oh, that's why people clutch their stomachs. So we're dealing with literal cutting up and words with hidden meanings. What else can we unpack about this whole anatomy thing? Where do we even start?
Well, it's all about levels of organization. Think of it like building a skyscraper. You start with the smallest units, your atoms and molecules, which form the building blocks of everything.
Okay, so that's like the steel beams and concrete, the raw materials. What comes next?
Those basic building blocks come together to form cells, the fundamental units of life.
Right, the cells. And we've got trillions of them, each one like a tiny bustling city in itself. So we've got trillions of cells, each one like a tiny bustling city. But what's going on in these cellular cities? Are they all doing the same thing?
That's a great question, and it highlights a really important point.
Mm-hmm.
Not all cells are created equal.
Oh, right. We talked about that earlier. We've got like 200 different types of cells in our bodies.
Exactly. And each of those cell types has its own unique structure and function.
So it's like each city has its own specialized workforce and infrastructure.
Exactly. You've got your construction workers, your communicators, your sanitation engineers, each with a specific job to keep things running.
Okay, that makes sense. So what would be some examples of these specialized cells in our bodies?
Well, let's take the liver, for example.
The liver, okay.
The main cells in the liver are called hepatocytes.
Hepatocytes.
Yeah, they're like the body's detoxification crew.
Detoxification crew.
They filter toxins from the blood. They neutralize harmful substances.
So they're like the liver's personal hazmat team.
Exactly.
Wow, that's impressive. What about other types of cells?
Well, think about your nervous system.
Okay, my nervous system.
It's made up of neurons.
Neurons.
And these are highly specialized cells that transmit information throughout the body using electrical and chemical signals.
So they're like the communication network of our body.
Exactly. Relaying messages from the brain to the rest of the body and back again.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense. And what about the cells that give our bodies structure and support?
That's where osteocytes come in.
Osteocytes, okay.
These cells are found in our bones, and they're responsible for building and maintaining the bone tissue that literally holds us together.
It's incredible how each cell type has its own unique role to play.
It really is.
But they're all still just individual cells, right? How do they come together to form tissues and eventually the organs in our bodies?
That is a great question, and it's the next level of organization we need to think about. Just like a city needs different neighborhoods and districts to function, cells group together based on their specialties to form tissues.
Okay, so you wouldn't want electricians building skyscrapers, right?
Exactly.
You wouldn't want a bunch of neurons trying to hold your skeleton together.
That would be a recipe for disaster.
So how do cells figure out who to team up with?
Think of it like this. Cells have ways of communicating with each other and recognizing cells that are similar to themselves.
Oh, interesting.
And this allows them to organize into 4 primary tissue types: epithelial, connective, muscular, and nervous.
Okay. I remember reading about those in our textbook chapter.
Great.
Epithelial tissue is like the lining of our organs and skin, right?
Exactly.
It acts as a barrier, protecting our insides from the outside world.
That's a great way to put it.
And then there's connective tissue, which is incredibly diverse. It includes everything from bones and cartilage to blood and fat. It's essentially the glue that holds everything together.
It provides support and structure to the body.
Okay, and then there's muscular tissue, which is responsible for all our movements.
Precisely.
Walking, talking, even digesting our food.
Exactly. All of that.
And finally, we have nervous tissue, which forms the brain, spinal cord, and nerves.
Yes, the control center of our body.
Wow. It's amazing how these 4 basic tissue types can create such a complex and intricate organism.
It is pretty incredible.
It's like those massive Lego sculptures. You start with simple building blocks, but when you put them together in the right way, you can create something truly incredible.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it really highlights the beauty of how our bodies are organized. From the tiniest cells to the largest organs, everything working together in a delicate balance to keep us functioning.
Okay, so we've got all these amazing tissues working together.
Right.
But I'm also seeing something in these notes about organs and organ systems. How do those fit into the picture?
You're exactly right. That's the next level up in our organizational hierarchy.
It's like we've assembled the walls and the framework, but what about the actual rooms? The plumbing? The electrical systems?
Perfect analogy. That's where organs come in. They're like functional units formed by different tissues working together.
So like the stomach.
Exactly.
Man, the stomach's got to be one of the hardest working organs. What's going on in there, tissue-wise?
Well, you've got that protective epithelial lining we talked about.
Right.
Then there's muscular tissue to churn and mix food. And, of course, it's all held together with connective tissue.
And don't forget about the nerves.
Of course. Can't forget about those nerves.
It's got to know when to start and stop digesting, right?
Absolutely. The stomach is a perfect example of how those 4 primary tissue types come together to create a complex, functional organ.
Okay, I'm with you.
And when you have groups of organs working together, like the stomach, the intestines, and the liver, that's when you get an organ system.
Right, like the digestive system. It's all starting to click into place now. I'm looking at our chapter outline here, and it lists 11 major organ systems in the body.
11. Wow.
11. We've got the integumentary system, which I guess is just a fancy way of saying skin, hair, and nails.
It is. And while it might seem simple on the surface, the integumentary system actually plays a crucial role in so many things. Protection, temperature regulation, even sensing the environment around us.
Huh, I never thought about it like that. Then there's the skeletal system, of course. It's incredible how something as seemingly inert as bones can be so dynamic.
I know, right?
Didn't we talk earlier about how bones are actually involved in producing blood cells?
Exactly. The skeletal system provides structure and support, allows for movement, and even houses those vital blood cell factories within the bone marrow.
Wild. Okay, what else have we got? The lymphatic system. That one always seemed kind of mysterious to me.
The lymphatic system is often overlooked, but it plays a critical role in immunity and fluid balance. Think of it as the body's cleanup crew, removing waste products and toxins, while also housing those immune cells that fight off infections.
Whoa! It's like a combination garbage collector and security guard. That's pretty awesome. And then we've got the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the endocrine system. Man, it's mind-boggling how many complex processes are happening inside us.
Every second of every day.
I know, right?
And here's the truly remarkable part. These systems don't work in isolation. They are all interconnected, constantly communicating and working together.
To maintain that delicate balance we call homeostasis.
Precisely.
That makes sense, but how do we even begin to make sense of where everything is located? It's like we need a map and a compass to find our way around in here.
You're right. We need some anatomical direction.
Anatomical directions. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Imagine you're standing tall, arms at your side, palms facing forward.
Like a doctor in one of those posters.
Exactly. That's the standard anatomical position. And it gives us a reference point to describe the location of any body part.
So I'm picturing a very confident anatomical model striking a pose.
Exactly.
What kind of directions are we talking about here?
Well, we have terms like superior, which means towards the head, and inferior, meaning towards the feet. So your heart is superior to your stomach,
Okay,
but inferior to your brain.
got it. That makes sense.
It's like learning a new language. But instead of hello, it's superior.
Huh. I love it. What other directional terms are there?
We also use anterior for the front of the body and posterior for the back.
Anterior, posterior, okay.
So your nose is anterior to your ears. while your spine is posterior to your heart.
Okay.
And then there are medial, meaning closer to the midline, and lateral, meaning further away.
Man, this is fascinating. It's like we're explorers charting a course through the human body. Speaking of exploring, we've got to talk about those internal compartments you mentioned earlier, the body cavities.
Ah, yes. Think of the body cavities as separate rooms within a mansion, each housing and protecting vital organs.
Okay, I love that analogy. So which organs live in which rooms?
Well, we have the dorsal cavity, located towards the back of the body. It's further divided into the cranial cavity, which houses the brain, and the spinal cavity, which encloses the spinal cord.
Those sound like pretty important rooms in our anatomical mansion.
They are.
What about the front of the body?
That's where we find the ventral cavity. It's a much larger space divided by the diaphragm into the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity.
Okay, so the thoracic cavity would be like the chest area, right?
Exactly. It houses the heart and lungs, those vital organs responsible for circulation and respiration.
Makes sense.
And below the diaphragm, we have the abdominopelvic cavity, which contains the stomach, intestines, liver, and other organs involved in digestion, excretion, and reproduction.
Wow, it's like each cavity has its own specialized team of organs working together.
It really is an incredible symphony of structure and function.
It really is. This is incredible. We've journeyed from the tiniest cells to the complex organ systems working together to keep us alive.
All thanks to some incredible organization.
I know. It makes you appreciate just how incredible the human body really is.
It really does.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the human body from the cellular level all the way up to the complex interplay of organ systems. We've even learned how to navigate this incredible landscape using anatomical directions.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into human anatomy. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those brain cells firing.